Good morning, and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Providence, where we love beyond belief. My name's Neil Bartholomew. I will be your worship associate today. A special welcome to those of you joining us remotely from wherever you may be, near or far. During the summer, while our ministers are away, the worship committee hosts a series of services which are led by church members and friends, with music also provided by church members and friends. This morning, we're very pleased to have a talk prepared by Sorrel Devine. Sorrel is unable to read her talk as she is still recovering her voice after a medical procedure, and her talk will be read by her friend Ellen O'Connor. Sorrel discovered First U in the mid-1980s when her children were young. During her decades-long career as an administrator for social services in Providence public housing, her attendance here waxed and waned, but since retiring, she has made a commitment to the church and signed the book in 2018. Sorrel is currently active in the Women's Alliance, the Community Band, and the Deacons. You'll see her playing a few nonverbal roles during the service. We extend our thanks to our musicians this morning, the a cappella singing group Sally Racket, with whom Sorrel normally would be singing, as well as Greg Moses, who will be accompanying the hymns. Let us now center our hearts and minds as we begin our worship together.
Somewhere along the road, someone waits for me. Beyond the present storms that blow, waiting patiently. No secrets held in an open heart, a spirit that soars over mountains. Somewhere along the road, someone waits for me. Somehow a guiding light always shows the way to those who lose their way by night, searching for the day, a day away from happiness. Tomorrow will bring a new sunrise. Somewhere along the road, someone waits for me. Sometimes when winds are still, unexpectedly, perhaps beyond this silent hill, a voice will call to me, singing, raise your eyes to see my world, raise your voice and sing out. Somewhere along the road, someone waits for me. Somewhere along
And now please join in the unison chalice lighting, which is in your order of service. This light burns also in our hearts, and it lights our path towards harmony, justice, and hope for all. And we light our sabbatical chalice now, and we take a moment to silently send our thoughts and care to our senior minister, Reverend Liz, while she is away for reflection and renewal. And know that she also kindles her own chalice each Sunday morning and takes a moment to send her thoughts and care to each of us. May this sabbatical be fruitful for us all, and may our reunion be a joyful fulfillment. And now we have a time when we greet each other. You can kind of wave to people around you. You can step around and say hi to folks you haven't seen in a little while. And if you see somebody who doesn't look familiar, introduce yourself to them particularly. And let's take a moment to also turn and wave to the folks who are joining us at home. If you're more towards the front of the hall, you'll be able to see the camera. There's Jonathan waving from behind the camera. That's where you're waving. We are glad that you folks at home are able to join us. And once again, we read together from the text in your order of service. We will read together our church covenant. We, the members of the First Unitarian Church of Providence, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with one word that the one be known by any name, and with gratitude for our deep connection to each other and to the larger web of existence, covenant to walk together in our search for truth, seeking the paths of wisdom, compassion, and justice. And you can now turn to your hymnals and rise in body or spirit for hymn number 100, I've Got Peace Like a River. So our reading this morning, excuse me, is the poem For Grief by John Donahue. When you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you gets fragile, your thoughts make your eyes unsure, and some dead echo drags your voice down where words have not confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss, and though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you when the silence of absence deepens. Flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid or undone. There are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life, until the moment breaks and you are thrown back onto the black tide of loss. Days when you have your heart back and you are able to function well until, in the middle of work or encounter, suddenly with no warning, you are ambushed by grief. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears has reduced to its last drop. Gradually, you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air to be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all the time. And from that, we move into the joys and sorrows, written in the book in the back of the meeting house by members of our congregation. I forgot to say. Our individual candles of joy and sorrow are lit from the candle in the beautiful candlestick carved by members of our partner church in Transylvania. A candle of hope for a dear friend battling cancer. A candle of remembrance to mark the 59th anniversary of the March on Washington. A candle of hope and best wishes for my daughter, whose birthday was yesterday. For an old friend fighting after he was T-boned in a car accident. Friends, let us rest in the gladness that we have each other to share in our joys and sorrows. It makes all the difference. I will now read the poem titled Heavy by Mary Oliver, after which we will have a period of silence. During that silence, if you have lost someone close to you in the past year, you are welcome to either stand or raise your hand in recognition of that loss. Heavy by Mary Oliver. That time I thought I could not go any closer to grief without dying, I went closer, and I did not die. Surely God had his hand in this as well as friends. Still, I was bent, and my laughter, as the poet said, was nowhere to be found. Then said my friend Daniel, brave even among lions. It's not the weight you carry, but how you carry it. Books, bricks, grief, it's all in the way you embrace it, balance it, carry it. When you cannot and would not, put it down. So I went practicing. Have you noticed? Have you heard the laughter that comes now and again out of my startled mouth? How I linger to admire the things of this world that are kind and maybe also troubled. Roses in the wind, the sea geese on the steep waves, a love to which there is no reply.
Hard to read after that. One note before I start Sorrel's beautiful remembrance. The words "the way" are capitalized, and you can't see that, and it's the pilgrim usage of the way as opposed to the directional. Grief, growth, gratitude. I saw the announcement from First UU sometime in the fall of 2020. As I recall, it read something like, "Have you ever wanted to hike the West Highland Way? Are you interested in spiritual pilgrimage?" I moved to the very edge of my desk chair. Yes, I have. And yes, I am. And having recently retired from a decades-long, often demanding career in social services, I could now actually do something like that. I quickly wrote to Nancy in the office to learn when registration would open, and then I set my phone alarm so I wouldn't miss out on being among the 20 lucky parishioners chosen to travel to Scotland to walk this iconic trail. Luck was with me that Monday morning as, after our Reverend Liz and Reverend Robert Hardy's, who would serve as our group's spiritual leaders, I was the first on the list. I was going to Scotland, and I was psyched. Now, a little background here might be useful for you all to understand my excitement. My love of all things Scottish goes back to my childhood. Growing up in Portland, Oregon in the 50s and 60s, my family were active members of a social club called Clan Maclay. Over the years, a surprising number of Scottish immigrants had made Portland their home, so Clan Maclay had a robust membership, boasting a Highland pipe band and weekly Highland dancing lessons. At age 9, I begged my parents to let me take dance lessons with Bonnie Heather Blythe, whose home featured different tartan wallpaper and tartan carpet in each room. Yeah, some of you may be cringing, but to my adolescent mind, this was the coolest. I studied through high school, competing at various Scottish Highland Games held each summer up and down the West Coast. After college, when I moved to Rhode Island, I taught Highland dancing in various community settings. And the first time I traveled to Scotland, it was as the featured dancer with the Clan Sutherland Pipe Band. Very exciting times for a young me. Well, I never gave up my love of Scottish music, dance, and Celtic culture. Because of my strong connection to Scotland, I felt extremely lucky to have this amazing opportunity to take part in a spiritual pilgrimage, and not just any pilgrimage, a pilgrimage in Scotland. When the list of participants was settled and we began our Zoom meetings, I also instantly knew I was going to have a profound experience under the guidance of these two reverends who were as equally immersed in Celtic culture, but also spirituality, especially poetry. I felt so lucky. I had the luck of the Scottish. However, that so-called luck ran out when, just a short time after committing to the trip, my husband of 30-plus years became seriously ill, and I became his primary caregiver. When he passed in June 2021, my world changed irrevocably. Like most married couples, we didn't always agree on everything, but he'd always been there, and we'd been there for each other when one of us was in crisis and needed the other to be strong and to love unconditionally. Now, I had lost that person, and I felt his absence keenly. Grief. I dealt with my grief the way I typically deal with most setbacks in my life. I got very busy. First, I threw myself into planning his memorial, and after that, I began volunteering with several arts organizations. I became more active at First U. I kept busy, very busy. At this point, I was not sure how I felt about going on a challenging hiking trip the next year. Pilgrimages have a focus, and my focus had suddenly shifted from one of travel, adventure, and personal challenge to an enormous emotional journey colored by loss and grief. I have to thank my close friends and family who encouraged me to stick with my plan, and my grief counselor who suggested that I take my husband with me. I'm happy to report I did just that. Actually, as it turned out, it was good that I had a year to prepare for the pilgrimage. I was able to meet consistently via Zoom with our group leader under Reverend Robert's guidance to discuss itinerary, clothing, and equipment. We talked a lot about clothing and equipment. We also shared our inner feelings about pilgrimage in general, what it means, our personal experiences, and expectations. I soon realized I was part of a very special cross-section of individuals. Everyone seemed friendly, interesting, empathetic, and very enthusiastic about the trip. Most importantly, perhaps, it seemed we all shared a love of humor. Everyone loved to laugh. So on May 9th of this year, I got on a plane to Glasgow to join my fellow pilgrims on the West Highland Way. On the evening before our first day of hiking, Reverend Robert gathered us together in the hotel function room. We lit the chalice and had a moment of silent meditation. He explained that we would meet every evening along the way to process and share our experience and to set an intention for the next day. The intention for our first day was the concept of thresholds. What did we want to leave behind? What did we hope to carry forward? Now, thresholds have significant meaning in Celtic culture. The Celts described thresholds as thin times or places where heaven and earth are closer together and the veil between the worlds is thin. In the Celtic imaginations, thresholds are very potent places. While each day started with a different intention, this concept of thresholds continued to resonate with me. What did I want to leave behind? What did I hope to carry forward? I suspected grief would head the top of my leave behind list. But after some deep contemplation and discussion with my fellow pilgrims, I recognized that one never really stops grieving the loss of a loved one, nor should we. Grief can and does change over time. It mellows and can almost become sweet at a certain point, and I didn't necessarily want to leave it behind. I came to the conclusion that what I really wanted to leave behind was regret. Regret was coloring my grief. Regret related to my relationship with my husband, regret about having left my now deceased mother on the West Coast to age without her only daughter, regret for not having been patient when patience was required, regret at having on many occasions been unkind in thoughts, words, and deeds. Maybe this pilgrimage would help me address these complicated emotions. Maybe, if I could find forgiveness, I could achieve peace and spiritual growth. Growth. It was on day 5 that I crossed my threshold. Although we started every day with an hour of silence, the 5th day was to be a full day of silence, and I had decided to walk alone so as to keep that silence. I was also excited because after a short time walking in the woods, we would be crossing the famous Rankin Moor. Now, this day's landscape was dramatically different from any landscape we'd experienced thus far. Climbing Connick Mountain 2 days earlier was challenging, and the views of Loch Lomond were stunning. But within an hour of walking into the moor, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was the opening up of terrain, a wide expanse of craggy rocks, fields of yellow gorse and purple heather just beginning to bloom, providing a clear view of the Highland Mountains in the distance. Or perhaps the occasional small waterfall breaking the all-encompassing silence. Suddenly, I was reminded of the beautiful poem set to music by beloved Scottish singer-songwriter Archie Fisher, "Open the Door." Flip it over. That's reminding me to exercise. Very sorry. Open the door. And I began to sing. Open the door softly. I've something to tell you, dear. Open it no wider than the crack upon the floor. What was this starkly beautiful place trying to tell me? Soft summer grasses have whispered it in your ear. Skeins of shining waters ask you patiently to hear. Tall, lonely timbers have taught it to the deer. Was it saying, cross your threshold and listen? This first verse had always conjured up renewal for me. My thoughts turned to life, this life. And although I'd been grieving for months, just how happy I was to be alive in this very moment. To quote Poet Laureate Mary Oliver's poem, Summer, "What are you going to do with this one beautiful life?" In almost the same moment, my thoughts turned to death and its inevitability, to my husband's death, to my own death. But as we know from science, matter never disappears, it just changes shape. Richard Dawkins once said, "You and I, in our ordinariness, are the privileged few who won the lottery of birth against all odds. How dare we whine at our inevitable return to our prior state? We are lucky to live. We are lucky to die." I knew at that moment that I believed that the spirit we know but cannot define, which is often called love, is also eternal. And when we leave these remarkable physical bodies of ours, that love, that spirit, returns to its origins. I thought about my Buddhist teachers who over the years had said that suffering, samsara, is a result of not knowing who or what we truly are, and that we are part of a whole that is eternal. And these thoughts gave me great comfort as I stood on the moor. The second verse of Open the Door reminds us that all things, including this life, must depart. And though the journey will end, it's a beautiful journey. Sad winds in autumn will tell you as they pass by. Wild geese flying eastward leave their music in the sky. Listen at evening, hear the curlews cry. But sad winds and curlews notwithstanding, what about all my regrets that I had that impacted my grief? My relationship with my husband was a long and complicated one. We loved each other fiercely, and we shared that love in raising our daughter. But as I said earlier, like most couples, we did not always agree on everything. One thing, we came from different backgrounds, and our upbringing was different. We had different aspirations. I needed a house to make a home. I wanted what you might call creature comforts, and I was willing to work hard for this type of life. While a very hard worker himself, he was not interested in acquisition, unless, of course, it was a new tool or machine or a musical instrument. Money to take a vacation was essentially wasted money, in his opinion. I liked to travel, both locally and farther afield, to experience new landscapes, ideas, and people. And after each excursion, I would return refreshed and with an increased love of the home we shared. He was a hobbit, albeit a 6'2" hobbit. A homebody whose idea of travel was to cross the yard to his woodworking shop, or just a bit further to his music studio. And although I knew this about him, I sometimes badgered him into going on trips with me, almost always a mistake. And I'm tempted to regret those times, but I very much regret having been resentful. Where our passions did converge was music. We had met in the early 1980s at an Irish traditional music session. Our home was often the gathering place for sessions filled with the sounds of fiddles, flutes, and accordions, and if I had my way, singing. But sometimes I would grow weary of the seemingly endless Irish fiddle tunes. I would ask him to play some of his old jazz or R&B records. That would be fun for a while, but then I might ask, "Why don't you come with me to Tanglewood?" He went once, and once again I regretted my urging him to do so. As I stood on the moor, I could now see how these insistent behaviors often stemmed from my own fear and insecurities, fear of not being good enough, of lacking some essential quality that would endear me to him, make me more interesting, more worthy. Also, I wanted him to be different, to be more like me, to want what I wanted. Further regret. Now, looking across that literally and metaphorically vast expanse, I was suddenly moved to ask for forgiveness. I had often in the past year cried over my mistakes and my regrets, but I had never asked out loud for release. And I was then reminded of something a spiritual medium had told me after my husband died. She said my husband was at peace and he wanted me to be happy. He specifically wanted me to have no regrets. How could I have forgotten this? It was in my journal. Thinking back, I realized I'd been more excited about the message itself she delivered, about his mistakes, and that he was sorry for the messes he left in the kitchen. He created them, and I would spend half a day in preparation. He would spend, half a day in preparation and cooking, and I would spend the other half of the day cleaning up. I considered this something so specific that she could never have known. And I was excited about that, and it made me truly believe I was hearing his voice through her. So now, standing on the moor, maybe I could now believe his request imploring me to have no regrets. Was I forgiven? Although I'd been told there would be few, if any, birds on the moors, it was at this moment that I looked up to see the silhouette of a large bird on top of a rock some 50 yards away. Now, before he passed, my husband had told me that he would try to visit us as a bird. My daughter and I have laughed several times when a particular bird in our backyard seemed intent on getting our attention. And we talked to that bird. So I talked to this bird. I sang to this bird. I asked for forgiveness. And although it had started raining again, I felt a gentle breeze wash over me. I had outgrown my regrets. My eyes filled with tears, and when I looked up, the bird was gone. I searched the sky for his departure, but I saw nothing. But my heart felt lighter, almost buoyant. Gratitude. That night, I literally stumbled into our lodgings. For days, I'd been dealing with severe blisters on both my feet. And while the weather had been off and on sun and rain, for the last 2 hours or more, it had been a solid downpour. But although I was exhausted and in terrible pain, I also felt a true happiness, and I was deeply grateful. This was the start of lasting feelings of gratitude. I felt gratitude for my body, which after 7 decades of use and not a little abuse, had brought me thus far along the way. I felt spiritual gratitude for the release from the regret and feelings of forgiveness I'd experienced on the way. I felt gratitude toward my fellow pilgrims who for days had opened their hearts and minds and shared their own deepest feelings and experiences on the way. I felt gratitude for this first UU community of which I am a part, and for the ongoing love and support I feel from you, its members.
And before we rise in body or spirit for hymn number 83, I'd like to ask Sorrel to just step up here, just for us to acknowledge that she was the author of what you just said. And now, please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 83, Winds Be Still. We are a spiritual community who govern ourselves through democratic process and who support ourselves through our own collective generosity. We take responsibility for how we conduct ourselves as individuals and as a community. And love and generosity are among our core spiritual values. Our annual pledges are the expression of generosity, of financial support for the mission of this church, and our weekly offering is a visible symbol of that support. We invite you to join in the spirit of love and generosity as the offering for the mission and vision of this church is now gratefully received. As always, thank you for all that you give, all that you do, and all that you are.
Open the door softly. I've something to tell you, dear. Open it no wider than the crack upon the floor. Open the door softly. I've something to tell you, dear. Warm summer grasses have whispered it in your ear. Skeins of shining waters ask you patiently for to hear. Tall, lonely timbers have taught it to the deer. Sad winds in autumn will tell you as they pass by. Wild geese flying eastward leave their music in the sky. Listen at evening and hear the curlews cry. Open the door softly. I've something to tell you, dear. Open it no wider than the crack upon the floor. Open the door softly. I've something to tell you, dear.
We know we're getting towards the end of the summer when we start to have lots of invitations to participate in the life of the congregation. And that is the case today. Well, only two, really. But the First U Art Collective is looking for members. The Art Collective is a loose group of artists and art supporters dedicated to providing a space for artist members and friends to share their work through our Art in the Atrium program. Dues are $10 per year, renewable every September, and help pay for such things as receptions, advertising, and maintenance of the gallery space. Artist members can participate in group shows or submit proposals for atrium shows sometime during the church year. To sign up for the collective or learn more about it, please see Lucille Riccitelli at coffee hour to pick up a form. Lucille is right there. She'll be out there later. And the Women's Alliance yard sale is Saturday, September 10th, 2 weeks from yesterday, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is an invitation to look for those items you have but don't use or need and are too good to just give away. Donate them to the Women's Alliance indoor yard sale. You can drop them off at church after Labor Day, Tuesday through Thursday, September 6th through 8th. So not this week, the following week, Tuesday through Thursday, 6th through the 8th of September, you can drop stuff off at the church. And so your items will get a new home, and the proceeds will provide the financial donations for local charitable organizations that support women, children, and families. Today, a truckload of stored items for the sale will be brought to the church. I think already has been brought to the church. The Alliance would welcome help with moving heavy items. If you can help, meaning if you can carry heavy items upstairs, you're the determinant of that. Please come to the atrium after today's service for directions. Our services next Sunday will be led by Ann Connor. She will talk about the importance of the fifth Unitarian Universalist principle and how it relates to our participation in the upcoming election. We look forward to seeing you then. And please check your First U Times, our weekly newsletter that is the single source for news, events, and everything that is happening at First Unitarian. First U Times is sent by email to all members, friends, and others who sign up to receive it. You can access it and sign up through our church website or fill out a guest registry form at the welcome table in the back of the meeting house, or I think there's one out in the breezeway also during the summer. And so please join in the unison reading in the back of, in our order of service for the chalice extinguishing. We carry the flame of peace and love and hope until we meet again. And our postlude now will be the traditional Scottish song, Wild Mountain Time, and the members of Sally Racket have informed me that we are welcome to sing along. If you know the words, sing out.
Oh, the summertime is come, and the leaves are sweetly blooming, and the warm mountain thyme rose around the purple heather. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pull Wild Mountain thyme all around the blooming if my true love, she won't go, I must show